Good afternoon. My name is Maggie. I am an alcoholic. Michaela is the best hostess. I'm glad I got her. Instead of Terry tried to get her. But it didn't work. I am so grateful to be here and so honored to share this conference with you guys. And I also love the topic, gratitude in action. Is so meaningful to me because I do a lot of service work, and that's how I express my gratitude. But I do want to thank you for having us here, and I want to welcome any newcomers in the room, or new, relatively new, maybe in your first year of sobriety, and also our old timers. Thank you for being here. When I got here, you saved my life. You saved my life. And I try to be like you and remember with gratitude that when I came to the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous, the lights were on, the coffee was brewing, there were big books in the room, there was a greeter at the door, and I was warmly welcomed. And I remember thinking, if you guys knew me, you wouldn't be welcoming me. I wasn't welcome in too many places when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, but you didn't care. You love us in spite of ourselves or because of ourselves, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm not an expert on Alcoholics Anonymous or the big book or anything like that. All I have to share with you is just my experience, strength, and hope, and the journey that I have been on. But I also want to say that, you know, in the large things, we're all one here. We're all wrecked in the same vessel. We've had a lot of the same experiences. You know, every time there's been a person up at this podium, and I do this, it's so funny, maybe you do it too. When they get into that part of their story that's kind of gut-wrenching, I'm with them. I am there in that room, like when Terry was talking about all her ups and downs and how she felt. I'm just right there with her, and the same thing with Danny and Sandy and Joe, and I just love that about Alcoholics Anonymous. And newcomers, what you're looking for when you're new is the identification. You may hear things, certain things that are different from your story, but if you really listen for the similarities, it'll help you a lot. And anyway, moving on here. What it was like. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. I guess you might know I don't have an Arkansas accent. Of course, you guys don't have an accent. I have an accent, right? Isn't that how it is? I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area in the 60s and 70s, and it was going on, I'll tell you that. We had a lot going on, and it wasn't very hard to fall into kind of a culture where we were always trying to change the way we felt. And that's, you know, every alcoholic, every drug addict has that similarity, is that what is it about us that from a very early age we want to change the way we feel? It's just not acceptable to us. And I was like that. I always felt different, wrong, awkward, not on the same page as everybody else, like everybody else knew something I didn't know, and that just plagued me. I know today that has a name. It's called a spiritual malady. I'm glad I know that, but I didn't know that for a long time. I learned that in Alcoholics Anonymous. Who knew? That spiritual malady that hits us sometimes when we're very young, and to me it was haunting. It was a constant reminder that I am not enough. I'm not enough. And I think that maybe for a lot of people that is their deep down, deepest fear. I'm not enough for this world. And so, of course, we're going to want to change the way that we feel, because that's a terrible feeling to walk around with. So I think I had my first drink when I was old, 16. I know some of you drank it at 9 and 2 and 4 and 12, and I didn't get there till I was 16. Now, I had a father who was a drinker. My father was an alcoholic. He did come to Alcoholics Anonymous at one point. This is I got from my mother, and but she said he had a problem with the concept of God or a higher power. He was an atheist. He didn't believe in that sort of thing, and it became a stumbling block to him. And if you're in that place and you're new, you know what? That doesn't have to be a stumbling block, because you can pick any power that you want. It doesn't have to be the church God or the God that your parents grew up with or anything like that. It's just some kind of power greater than yourself. And today in Alcoholics Anonymous, there are atheist groups. Did you know that? Yeah. There are atheist groups, and that just proves that you can have any power greater than yourself. And it could be just your group of drunks, G-O-D. Anyway, he drank himself to death. That's what happened. He died at 47 years old. He was a periodic drinker, which I'm not. Periodic drinkers are baffling to me, because they can go a long time without a drink. And he would go 3 or 4 years without a drink. But he'd always go back to it. That's the thing. We can stop drinking, but can we stay stopped? How many times have we quit drinking or been forced to quit drinking? You go to jail, you're forced to quit drinking. But what happens when you walk out of that jail? You're right back to it. So it's staying stopped. And because he did not have the program of Alcoholics Anonymous or any program, he kept going back to the drink. I remember the last time that he drank, it was in the 60s. Hong Kong flu. If you're not old, you don't know what this is. We had a little pandemic, and it was the Hong Kong flu. And NyQuil had just come out. And my father decided he needed some NyQuil. Now, I don't know how NyQuil is now, but back then it had a lot of alcohol in it. And my father, maybe not knowing that part of alcoholism is that we have bodies that process alcohol differently. And if we put any alcohol in our body whatsoever, it sets up a phenomenon of craving. And that necessitates a second drink. So he got those bottles of NyQuil, and he was drinking them, and he ended up in the hospital. Now, we lived in the San Francisco Bay Area. The only place that treated drunks in that area back then, in the 60s, was Napa State Hospital. Napa State Hospital is a mental hospital, and that's where us drunks went back then to dry out. And he just never made it out of the hospital. He was in the DTs. He was strapped down to a table. He was given medication. He vomited and aspirated. And that's how he died. So I can tell you that watching my father go through all this stuff, and our family, because of his drinking and all this sort of thing. Oh, and I want to say this also. My father was brilliant. He was a brilliant man. He was 4 times president of the Typographical Union in the state of California. He was so smart. He helped so many people, but he had that weakness. He had alcoholism. So it was very sad. Watching him go through this, I said, I'm never doing that. I'm never going to drink. He drank Jim Beam. I'm never going to drink Jim Beam or any other. I'm just not going to do that. Well, obviously that changed, because remember, I had that thing. I really needed to change how I felt. My spiritual malady was getting worse and worse. So somewhere along the line, I started experimenting with alcohol. And I think the first time I had alcohol was over at my friend Terry's house. This is a Terry Boy. Terry Boy, we're over his house and going through his parents' liquor cabinet. We didn't know anything about mixing drinks or anything like that. So that I just poured a glass of vermouth. Didn't taste good. I gagged. I remember that. Glass of vermouth, but I felt different. That's the gist of it. I felt different once I got it down. Just like Terry was saying, I immediately wanted another one, and that started off my little drinking career. Now, I think in my mind, I feel like I drank normal for a while. Because, when you're 16, it's not easy to get alcohol. Not where I'm coming from. There's no liquor in my house. Most of my friends, I don't think their parents drank very much, maybe some beer. And I just didn't chase after it at first. I liked it, I wanted it, and I drank every moment I could. We would devise ways of getting it. And I'm not going to get into that, but that was funny. Okay, moving on. So I kind of struggled through high school. I was so distracted. I was so distracted with music and rock and roll and outside issues, dry goods, as Terry calls them, and drinking and boys and all that stuff. I just barely graduated. But I did graduate. And I was just out of the house. No, let me back up. My mother said, I heard this somewhere in this weekend, you either get a job or you go to college. Okay, we're not sitting around. And I didn't like that. I did get a job, though. I got a job at a dress shop. And I worked there about a month. And I asked, when can I have a vacation? Because my friends were going to Lake Tahoe. I said, when can I have a vacation? And she said, you've only worked here a month. I didn't know how all this stuff worked. And she said, no, you cannot have a vacation. So I quit, I had to go to Tahoe. There was a big party going on. Anyway, my mother wasn't very happy about that. But right around that time, I was hanging out at this park across the street from my house, and all of a sudden this 1957 white station wagon with pink curtains pulled up in front of the park, and this guy got out and fell immediately on the ground. This is my future husband, by the way. I'm going to just opened the car door, not this one, fell out of the car, and then got up, and he looked at me. I was across the street. He told me later he saw a halo around my head. And that began this crazy alcoholic lifestyle that went on for the next 20-something years. Our relationship was so based on getting high, getting drunk. I remember when he picked me up for our first date together. And he knocked on the door, he met my mother. We walked out to that station wagon with the pink curtains. He opened the passenger door for me, and a bunch of empty beer cans fell out, rolled down the street. And I remember thinking, I'm going to have a good time tonight. I just know it. He was 22, could buy alcohol. I was 18. And so we dated for about a couple of months, and he was going to have to go to jail for about 30 days. Some little thing he got messed up with. And but when he got out, we were going to move in together. And so I anticipated him getting out of jail, and he finally got out after 30 days, and we moved in together. Now, our first apartment, the rent was $175 a month.
That's nice.
Yeah, you think so, huh? We were always late on our rent. I don't know why. We just had other things to spend money on, I guess. Anyway, we started out in this life, and it was all about drinking. It was all about partying, going to the Fillmore, going to the Avalon Ballroom, all these bands that I got to see. I'm glad I got to see the bands, because that was a wonderful experience. But what happened in our relationship is that we started having trouble. We had fun, and like I say, fun, the problem with fun is trouble always starts out fun, doesn't it? Right? It always looks like a good idea at the time, and it's fun, and then all of a sudden trouble comes in. So we started having trouble. We were having trouble in our relationship. We were having trouble with the neighbors. I am your worst nightmare of a neighbor. We play music till 3 or 4 in the morning, all the way up. You know, it's like I'm too selfish to think that my neighbor has to get up in the morning and go to work. I'm too selfish to even think about that. And they didn't like us very much. And they would call the police, and the police would come over, and we would eventually get asked to leave. And so we just moved to another place and started all over again. But looking back on that, what really amazes me is how selfish and self-centered I was, but didn't have any clue about that. Didn't have any self-reflection about other people. It was just weird. So we continued on that for a while, and things were getting worse and worse. The cops were coming to our house a lot. I thought, I think we've got to change something. And I thought about it for a while, my first little inventory up here. And I thought, well, we'll just have a baby. Right? That's going to fix everything. We just get pregnant and have a baby, and that'll make us grow up. And then we won't be drinking so much because we'll have a baby. Well, that didn't work. That really didn't work. Kind of sad. We had this beautiful baby boy, and to my surprise, things got worse, not better. And I got pregnant again, and I had twins, and then I had another baby. I don't know. We stopped all that. That was getting out of hand. So now I have these 4 children. I have 4 children. I'm full-blown alcoholic by this time. I know the difference between right and wrong, but when it comes to alcohol, I feel like I don't have a choice. I have to drink. So the kids would go without because I'm selfish and self-centered, and I got to have a drink. So if it came to diapers or beer, it was beer. Hate to say that, but that's what it was. I couldn't get out of my own way, and these kids suffered because of it. And I dragged them around in my alcoholism for a while, and they suffered because of it. And at the end of that, what ended up happening is I came home from one of my little weekend spinaroos, and everybody was gone. And that husband had taken those children and moved to a different town and left a note for me. And he said, I don't know what you're doing, but we can't go on like this. And so they're gone. So now I'm drinking. I have no filter. I have no brakes. I don't have anything. Maybe you can call it hitting the skids. I was hitting the skids. I was going to jail. I got 2 DUIs in 1 week in 2 different counties. It was just crazy. And this went on for a while. I ended up losing my home, my car, my kids, my husband. I lost almost everything. I was 35 years old, dying of alcoholism. I was skinny because I never ate. Who eats and drinks at the same time? I don't. I just drink. And I was in a bar one afternoon, and I was drinking, and by then I'm taking pills. I'm taking these tranquilizers the doctor gave me to not drink so much. He said, now don't drink when you take these. And I said, okay. Anyway, that was causing a lot of problems. And I'm in a bar. I go in the bathroom. Evidently, I passed out in the bathroom. And the cocktail waitress and one of the bar patrons had to come in and drag me out and put me up at a table with a cup of coffee and 12-step me. I got 12-step in a bar. Because that guy, I don't know why he was in the bar, but he was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. He would sit at a bar and drink coffee. Okay, that's all right. He was my little earth angel at the time. I was trying to find a place to stay. For a while, I was living with my mom, and then she said, "You can live here, but you can't drink and live here." And she found a bottle of vodka in the closet, so I got booted out. Anyway, I called her up one day and I said, "Look, I don't know what to do anymore." You know, the night before I had been out in North Highlands, California, and I went to a phone booth to call somebody. And I got to that phone booth. I even had money for the phone, but there was not one person who was taking phone calls from me anymore, including my family. They just said, "No more. We're not going to sit and watch you do this." And I hit a bottom. And I did that alcoholic prayer. "God, please help me. Please help me. I don't know what to do." You know, this wonderful little third step prayer that we learned from Hawaiian Nick. And it goes like this. "Lord, I'm ignorant. I don't know what to pray for. Give me that which you think best for me, and give me the strength and the wisdom to be happy about what you deem fit to give me and how and where you keep me." I did my alcoholic prayer. I called my mom the next day, and she took me to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. So we get to this meeting. Now, I'm a mess. I am a mess. I'm sure I have brain damage from alcohol, but I'm not sure if it's going to stay with me or not. I had this facial tic and I had 2 different shoes on, and I had no dignity left, no pride. That was all gone. She took me to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous because we had called AA that morning, and I talked to a lady on the phone at AA, and I remember her name was Pauline, and she told me where the meeting was, and she said, "Stay away from the men." I don't know why she said that. I have no idea. But I was not interested in men at that point in my life at all. So I go to this meeting. I'm sitting in the back row. A guy is chairing the meeting. His name is Arnold. He's in the big meeting in the sky now. And he was talking about his experience, Strength and Hope, about his alcoholism and recovery. And I started to identify with some of the things he was talking about, even though he and I had nothing in common. I wouldn't even drink with him, I don't think. But he started to talk about those things that alcoholics know about, but don't talk about. And I kind of felt a little bit embarrassed for him because he was talking about this stuff like, you know, when you wet your pants and stuff like that. I was doing that, but I wasn't talking about that. No. Anyhow, I did not raise my hand as a newcomer. Even though they asked for newcomers in the room, I did not raise my hand. But during the course of that meeting, and after he got done talking and opened the meeting for discussion, every time someone talked, they'd turn around and look at me. It was odd. It was weird. Somehow they knew I was a newcomer. And after that meeting, after we said the Lord's Prayer, I got rushed. A lot of people coming up to me. They gave me a big book. They were giving me hugs. And they were telling me this: "Maggie, get a sponsor. Get a sponsor and work those steps." I looked at the steps and I thought, God, no, I'm not going to do that. I've tried church. And I just didn't understand. They said, go to a lot of meetings, get a sponsor, work the steps, get into service as soon as you can. And I can tell you that I did none of that. I did none of it. None of it. Shortly after I went to my first meeting, that husband found out about it, brought those kids back. You know, it's not easy taking care of 4 kids. He brought them back, and I had gotten a little apartment, and I was hanging around, not going to a lot of AA meetings, but I was just working on myself. Did you ever work on yourself? I was working on myself, and I got my kids back, and I didn't have time to go to meetings. And I really hadn't got around to getting a sponsor, and I really wasn't going to work the steps. I thought, I've been to AA, we're good, I'm not drinking. I was drinking near beer. That does have a little bit of alcohol, but if you, anyway, stupid. Anyhow, so what happened? I woke up one morning and I thought, you know what? I'm going to go out to Bob's Place, which is a bar I used to go to in Elk Grove, California, and I'm going to say hi to everybody. They're probably wondering where I am. They have not seen me in 9 months. I'm going to go tell them that I'm sober now. So I go to this bar, stupid. I go to this bar and I sit down at the bar, and the bartender says, "Hi, Maggie." And I said, "Hi, what do you have? What do you have?" And I was going to say a Coke, right? But I didn't say a Coke. I said a 7 and 7. And before I knew it, there was a drink in front of me. Now I'm reflecting on all the stuff I heard in the AA meetings. And one thing I remembered was this. There are times when we have no defense against that first drink. And I'm looking at the drink, and then I think of this. Maggie, call us before you have a drink. I had phone numbers. I had phone numbers in my purse. Call us before you have the drink. And I don't know if I had defense or no defense, but I drank that drink. And, of course, when I take a drink, I have to have another drink. That phenomenon of craving is going on. So I have another drink, another drink. I go on this weekend bender. On the third day, my sister found me in a bar. And she said, I said, "What are you doing here?" And she said, "I come to take you home. I've called your sponsor," or this lady that I was talking to on the phone. Anyway, she said, "I'm here to take you home." And I said, "I'm not ready to go home. I'm not done." And she said, "I'll sit here till you get done." Now, she said I had 17 kamikazes. She was counting. I could not get drunk. Now, maybe the bartender was watering them down. I don't know. 17 kamikazes. I finally turned to her and I said, "I'm done." But I did have her stop at the store and get a pint. But she took me home. She put me to bed. I had that pint. I didn't come to for 3 days. You know, you would think that if you went 9 months without a drink, that it would be like starting over. You might have a little headache the next day. No. I was in withdrawals, big time. And that shocked me. I was sick. I was so disappointed in myself. But let me tell you this. Bill Wilson did a little writing one time, and he said, and he was talking about relapses. And he said, well, for sure a relapse can kick you downstairs, but sometimes a relapse can kick you upstairs. And that relapse kicked me upstairs. Because that relapse took away all doubt from me, all doubt that I was an alcoholic, and that it didn't matter if I wanted to drink or didn't want to drink, I was going to drink. So that was my step one, wasn't it? Powerless over alcohol. Scared me. Came back into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, cried my first meeting, just cried the whole time. Worked up enough courage to get a sponsor, and just went. I felt like I was going to throw up when I'm asking this woman to be my sponsor. It just goes against everything in me, but I'm desperate. I'm desperate. So I'm taking actions I don't even believe in. I'm taking actions I don't want to do, but I'm desperate to not drink. I'm going to lose my kids again. You know, I have so much at stake here. I have so much to lose. But I know left to my own devices without you guys, I will drink. I will drink. It's going to happen. So I get this sponsor, and she said, I'll sponsor you if you do everything I tell you to do. And I said, okay. And she said, you're going to come over to my house every Saturday, and we're going to work the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And in my mind, I thought, aren't we moving too fast? But I didn't say it out loud. I just said, yes, okay. So I went over her house the next Saturday, and we opened the big book, and we read the doctor's opinion and Bill's story. Now, I have always related to Bill's story. That part of his story where he talks about the morning terror and madness was upon me. I had the worst withdrawals, the worst, I'm sure. And I really related with that. And the times that Bill relapsed over and over and over and over. And you read Bill's story and you keep thinking, okay, this will be the last time he'll drink. Yeah. But then he drinks again. And then he drinks again. It's just so profound to me to read Bill's story in the big book. We read those and we talked about powerless over alcohol. I'm with it. I'm 100% powerless over alcohol. Life's unmanageable? Yes, I would say so. When you lose everything and you're homeless, your life is pretty unmanageable. I mean, come on. And it doesn't mean the stuff that we did when we were drunk. Of course, that's unmanageable. It's the stuff. It's a quality of our life. It's the way we're living. I looked up the word derelict. Derelict is someone who, it's called self-abandonment, where you abandon yourself. You don't care anymore. The light in your eyes is gone. There's no hope. You just accept that this is the way it's going to be the rest of your life. I had no idea how good my life was going to get. We're working the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. We get to step 2. And she said, and I'm like, I don't know about this God stuff, Ronell. I just don't think I could do the God thing. And she said, I want you to write a paper and tell me who you want your higher power to be and what you want it called. So I went home and wrote this little thing. Well, I think God, number 1, should be forgiving, loving, doesn't even remember all the bad stuff I did. It just goes away in a bubble. And wrote all this stuff down and took it to her. And she said, okay, is this a higher power that you can work with? And I said, yes. She goes, okay, hold on to that higher power. We're going to work the rest of the steps. Did step 3, got to step 4, wrote almost everything down on that 4th step, almost everything. And went over her house on the Saturday to do the 5th step. And here's what she does to me. Okay, you ready? Yep, I'm ready. I got my little 4th step here. I'm all ready, my little notebook. She goes, okay, we're going to start out with the things that you did not want to tell me. Oh, I mean, she just knocked me for a loop. And I was so blown away that she would know that I just told her. I just told her that stuff. And I told her all the rest of the stuff. And at the end of my 5th step, this is what she said to me. So you're a liar, cheat, and a thief. And I said, yeah, I am. I accepted that. Something had happened to me. When I worked step 1, when I worked step 2, I was a completely different person after step 1. And then after step 2, the person that worked step 3 was a different person. And then step 4, a different person. I never would have. If someone had called me a liar, cheat, and a thief before that, I'd have got up and walked out. Cussed her out probably. How dare you? But I knew it was true. She sent me home to make a list of my character defects. And I couldn't think of none. Because I always thought, even after doing that 5th step, I still had this idea in my head that I do things for other people all the time, and they don't appreciate it. And really, I'm just a very misunderstood person. And she laughed. She laughed at me. She used to laugh at me all the time. In fact, when I first went to work step 1 with her, I came with a piece of paper that had all my problems on it. I had a whole bunch of problems, and I wrote them all out because I thought that's what we do in Alcoholics Anonymous. We talk about our problems. And she goes, "What is that?" And I said, "It's a list of my problems." And she laughed. She said, "Why don't you put them away, and we'll talk about them when we're done with the steps." Oh, I worked so hard on that list. Anyway, so I said, okay. So we put those away. We finished working the steps. Before I even got to step 12, she had me in service. She said, "You have to get a job in Alcoholics Anonymous. And you have to either go to school or go to work. You can't live on welfare." I mean, she's pulling my covers left and right. And so my first job in Alcoholics Anonymous was butt can. That's always what they give the newcomer, right? Empty the butt can after the meeting. Make sure that the cigarettes are out before you put it in the dumpster. So I had that job at the Tuesday Night Cottage group. Somehow or another, when I was about 2 months sober, she got me into a prison. She was a KDAC certified drug and alcohol counselor, and she had connections with the jails and prisons and stuff. Here we are at a prison. I'm like, what are we doing here? Anyway, she introduced me to service. And when I was 6 months sober, a woman called me, and she said, "My name's Kelly, and you're my sponsor." And I said, "I don't think so." I said, "I am new. I'm not, how can I sponsor, who told you I'm your sponsor?" And she said, "Ronell." And I said, "You call me back in 10 minutes. I called Ronell, and she goes, "Yes, I did tell her to call you. You are her sponsor." And I said, "I don't know how to sponsor people." She said, "You just do what I did with you, and I'll help you." And I said, okay. So I started sponsoring this crazy girl. She's the craziest girl in town. But you know, I'm sponsoring her, and I start to care about her. I start to care about what's going on in her life. And, you know, when I'm caring about her, I'm not thinking about me. And so that was that experience that I had where I could go periods of time, like an hour, without thinking about me. And that was very freeing, by the way. And it was wonderful. And I've never not sponsored since that time. My sobriety date is June 7th, 1989. And I've been indoctrinated into service work. And I'm so, so grateful for that. I'm going to move along here. She told me to get a job or go to school. I went back to school. I went to college, and I got a college degree. And the day I graduated, there was a bunch of AA people in the bleachers, and they were making so much noise when I got up there to get my diploma. I mean, the first day of college, I could not comprehend what I was reading. I had to work harder than anyone else in those classes. I was older than them. I was burnt out, sober for the really first time, and had to read a book like 5 times before I could comprehend the chapter that I was reading. But I worked hard at it, and I graduated with high honors. I didn't know I was capable of that. After that, I went to work for a law firm, a little family law firm, because my studies were paralegal. And I started working for these attorneys, and I'm really good at my job. Who knew? I'm really good at my job. And after about 18 months, they told me they were going to have to lay me off. So I applied for a job at the state of California, and I was hired. And I worked at a little labor PERB, Public Employee Relations Board, and then I got a job at the DMV. Now let me tell you that one of the things my sponsor told me was that I couldn't drive without a license anymore. I didn't have a license. It had been revoked for loss of consciousness behind the wheel of the car. I don't even remember. But they had revoked my license, and she said, "You have to get a license." She said, "We don't get sober to live like outlaws." Okay. I go, "Well, what do I do?" And she goes, "You write a letter. You write a letter to the DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles, and you tell them that you've been sober a year. and that you have a sponsor. And what do you need to do to get your license back? I said, they're not going to give me my license right now. She goes, just write the letter. She's mean. So I wrote the letter. I get a reply in a couple of weeks. And it says, we've set up an appointment for you to come in to talk about your license. And it was the driver's safety department. So I go to this appointment. I'm so nervous, you guys. I go to this appointment, and we're talking about this loss of conscious behind the wheel of a car. She's asking me questions about that. I said, I don't even remember. I was in a blackout. But I am sober now. I'm sober in Alcoholics Anonymous for a year. I have a letter here from my sponsor. And that was kind of, kept saying that over and over again in reply to her questions that I couldn't answer. And she said, okay, we'll let you know. And I thought, I'm not getting it. I'm never getting a license again. I feel like I made a fool out of myself. Anyway, I get home, and a couple weeks later, I get a license in the mail. It's like kind of restricted, but it's a license. And I'm so happy. I couldn't believe that I had a license. Anyway, fast forward, I get a job at the Department of Motor Vehicles. That's God's sense of humor, isn't it? I get a job at the Department of Motor Vehicles, and I'm working in the licensing department. And I see letters coming in, and these letters say, I've been sober in Alcoholics Anonymous for a year. What do I need to do to get my license back? And I'll like put those at the top of the pile. They're getting their license back. I'm going to do everything I can for them. And that's how it works. You know, a lot of people are out there wanting to see us do really well, and then wanting to help us if we're really serious about it. And I got the benefit of that. You know, working those steps, when I got to have a spiritual awakening with each one of those steps, like I said. By the time I got to 12, I was not the same person. I had some really interesting and profound spiritual experiences in my first year of sobriety. And it has given me such a good foundation. I'm so glad I had that kind of sponsorship, that kind of foundation, because it has held me in good stead all these years. Anyway, that husband and I didn't make it. Those kids grew up in Alcoholics Anonymous, by the way. But one night I'm over at a meeting in Folsom, and I meet Frank. He's a member of that group too. We're out in Folsom, California. His name was Big Book Frank back then. So they called him Big Book Frank. And I had met him, and I decided to have some fun with him one night. And I took my big book up to him, and I said, hey, Big Book Frank, you know there's 3 misspelled words in the big book, right? And he said, no, I didn't know that. Where are they? And I said, look them up yourself, Big Book Frank. He didn't like that. Anyway, we started to be friends, and in the same home group, and you know, we all get close in our home groups, and it's wonderful. And at one point, he asked me out on a date. And I thought, okay, we'll see where this goes. So we started dating. We dated forever before we got married. Sandy was talking about knowing each other through the different seasons before you get married, because that little joke about the moving van at the house, we're not doing that. We decided that if we're meant to be together, then we're going to do things the right way, and we did. We dated for 6 years before we got married. We got married at the Sacramento Zoo. We shut down the zoo, had all our guests come in. There was over 100 people there. We had a wonderful AA wedding, and then took off for Hawaii on our honeymoon. It was really wonderful. So Frank and I have been on this sober journey together. We do service work together. We did many years over at Folsom Prison. We take a book study in on a Tuesday or Friday night, and and got to experience all that. And what I learned there is there are people in that prison that are never getting out, but they're sober. And they say, we're free. We're spiritually free. And what an experience that was. The next correctional thing that I did was I became the coordinator for the Sacramento County Jail, and would coordinate going into that prison. County jail. And it's different from prison because we have people in and out all the time in a county jail. So we never know how long we're going to have the girls in there. And I was up there one night. You know, where God is most needed, God is most present. Isn't that true? And I'll tell you, when you find God, go to county jail. Go to Folsom Prison. Go to Wrightsville. Go to any of these places. I have had more spiritual experiences in the jail as a visitor. I just can't even describe all of them, but I'll tell you about one of them. I was in there one night. It was a Tuesday night. We had a new girl. Anyway, me and Linda are telling our stories, and we open it up for conversation, and I asked the new girl if she wanted to say anything, and she burst into tears. I'm like, okay, you don't have to talk if you don't want to. She goes, no, I need to talk. She said, I got in here the other day. I got arrested on a Sunday for drunk driving out in Ione, California. They took me in. I'd been arrested for DUI 4 times. This is my 4th time. My husband was very upset with me. I got out on a Monday. They OR'd me, and my husband came pick me up. And we had to go to the tow yard because I was driving his work truck when I got pulled over. And plus I had the dog with me. So we went to the impound yard to get his truck out, but it was Columbus Day. And they said, we can't release it. We don't have a release on it. You'll have to come back tomorrow. So they asked, can we get the tools out of it? And they said yes. So they got the tools out of the truck. He's having her drive and got the tools. Then went over to animal control to try to get the dog out. Well, you got to wait. It's a holiday, so he had to come out next day. So she's driving, and he's in the passenger seat. And he said, I want to stop by my daughter's house. And she said, look, I've been in jail all night. I just want to go home. And he said, I insist that we stop by my daughter's house, blah, blah, blah. She said, we stopped by the daughter's house. We went inside. She handed me a beer. I drank that beer, and I asked for another one, and I don't remember anything after that. She came out of her blackout. She was at UC Davis Medical Center. The doctor was in there saying, sign this paper, we're going to release you. There's some sheriff deputies out here that want to talk to you. She didn't know what is going on. The sheriff deputies come in and arrest her. She said, what happened? And they said, you ran a red light at Sunrise and Jackson. You T-boned a school bus. There were no kids on it because it was a holiday, or it was a Sunday, or a holiday. But your husband was killed. And I'll tell you what, back to that jail, I'm listening to her story, and my first reaction is, that's me. I'm you, and you're me. I had that instant identification with her. That could have happened to me 100 times. I drove drunk all the time, but that happened to her. And here she is in my jail on that night. And I said, I'm going to pray for you, Lisa. She was with us for about 14 months. She went through the process of going to court. She got her sentence. She went to Chowchilla. She got a long sentence. That's when they were still doing the third strike. Yeah, it was her 3rd felony. So she went away kind of for a long time. I checked up on her after that. With the women that are going into Chowchilla, and they said, yeah, Lisa's there. She worked all her steps at the Sacramento jail, went to Chowchilla, and she helps other women in that prison. She carries the message to them. This is what we get to do in Alcoholics Anonymous. We're all links in a chain. Our chain goes all the way back to Bill and Bob. You are a link in that chain. And our responsibility, being a link in that chain, is to deliver the message of Alcoholics Anonymous intact the way that we got it. And that's what gratitude in action is. In closing, we moved to Arkansas 6 years ago, out of California. Just couldn't stand California anymore. Moved here. I love Arkansas. It's my higher power to me is so linked with nature. And, you know, coming from a city where it's all concrete and asphalt and all that stuff, being out and living in a beautiful home out in the middle of nature has put God so close to my heart. I get to sponsor these beautiful women from Arkansas, and I have a wonderful home group, the Bridging the Gap group in North Little Rock, and Frank and I are involved with corrections there. You'll hear all about that tonight when he talks. But we are so, so grateful to be members of Alcoholics Anonymous, and so, so grateful to be in Alcoholics Anonymous in Arkansas with you wonderful, wonderful people. Thank you so much.